Good morning, everybody. I'd encourage you to take your seats, those that are still standing. Welcome to the Woodrow Wilson Center. I'm Andrew Seeley, Executive Vice President. I have the honor of welcoming the Foreign Minister of Indonesia here and all of you on behalf of Jane Harman, our CEO and President. She is at the Defense Policy Board this morning with Secretary Ash Carter, but hopes to make it back in time to greet the Foreign Minister before the end of her presentation. We're very honored to have the Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi here with us today. She is the first female Foreign Minister of Indonesia. Prior to being sworn in as President Widodo's Foreign Minister, she served as Indonesia's ambassador to the Netherlands, Norway, and Iceland. One of her key roles as Foreign Minister is as chief negotiator for many of Indonesia's comprehensive partnerships with, among others, the EU, Brazil, and the United States. Minister Marsudi's most recent visit to Washington marks the fifth iteration of the US-Indonesia Comprehensive Partnership, a high-level dialogue that has elevated and expanded the US-Indonesia bilateral relationship by intensifying consultations and cooperation on key issues. Indonesia symbolizes diversity. It has the world's largest Muslim population, but it also has more Christians than the population of Australia, its neighbor to the south. And as the world's third largest democracy, fourth most populous country, and 10th largest economy, Indonesia has become a vital U.S. partner, not only in Asia, but also in the world. And if I can add to that, let me say we know far too little about Indonesia in Washington, not those here assembled, who I'm sure are quite knowledgeable, but I have no doubt that Indonesia will be one of the countries that will truly mark the global stage in the next few years. It is a country that is an example of how to deal with diversity, from which we could learn a lot, as well as a country that will play a vital role because of the size of its economy, the size of its population, and its ideas for how to insert itself into the global system. Before turning it over to Minister Marsudi, I'd like to thank our partners in this event, the Embassy of the Republic of Indonesia and the United States-Indonesia Society. We're very happy to have with us the Indonesian Ambassador, Budi Bowoleksono, also known as Sunny. Ambassador, there you are. Good to see you. He is someone I've had a chance to get to know a little bit in Washington, and he is both a man who is very insightful and a very good humor. He's someone who we all have a very good impression of. So it's great to see you, Ambassador, and to have you here at the Wilson Center. We're delighted to have Minister Marsudi here. Jay Stapleton Roy, Ambassador Stapleton Roy, former ambassador to Indonesia, to Singapore, and to China, will be moderating today's session. He is the founding director of the Wilson Center's Kissinger Institute on China and the United States, and plays a number of other roles, has kept quite involved with issues of US-Indonesia relations as well. And it is close, Indonesia is a country that is very close to his heart. And so very glad that State can moderate the session today. And we're delighted to have Minister Marsudi with us. And let me turn it over to the Minister. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Dr. Saleh, the Vice President of Wilson Center, Ambassador Roy, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, very good morning to all of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I met Secretary Kerry, and we discussed how we can build a stronger bilateral relation in the future. We are not talking, or we are not only stock taking where we are, but at the same time, we discuss about the future relation between Indonesia and the USA. Issues related to trade and investment, climate change, moderation, tolerance were discussed. Yesterday also, both of us announced the planned visit of President Joko Widodo to Washington, D.C. on the 26th October. So we have 4 weeks to prepare the visit of the president. And this is also the 10 years after the last president had a meeting with the US president in White House. So it is really timely for the president of Indonesia to sit again with the president of the USA to discuss about the bilateral relation between the two countries. And last night, I spoke at the US-Indo dinner. I spoke about how we could capitalize on the development in Indonesia and the US to further deepen our relationship. I spoke also on how strong US-Indonesia relation can contribute to the challenges faced by humankind. Now, today, this morning, I stand before you, I stand before a prestigious forum at Wilson Center, and I would like to share Indonesia perspective on the evolving regional architecture and how Indonesia contribute to global peace and stability. 2 points that I would like to focus on this morning. First is on the regional and landscape in Asia-Pacific. And second, on the need to strengthen regional architecture in the Indian Ocean. That part will be very interesting. Now allow me first to start the first point, that is the regional landscape in Asia-Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussion on the regional architecture in Asia-Pacific has been on the regional agenda for some time. This discussion gained more attention as strategic landscape of the region continues to develop. We first saw the rise of Japan and then South Korea to become two Asian economic powerhouses. We later saw China and India move up the development path. We saw also a progressive development in Southeast Asian countries. At the end of the year, these Southeast Asian countries will be consolidating to form one community, that is the ASEAN community. The recent nuclear deal with Iran has also brought in a new important element to the strategic landscape of the region. At the same time, the region is also seeing new forms of threat such as cybercrimes, terrorism, foreign fighters, people smuggling, drugs trafficking, and conflicts within border. Addressing these challenges and threats requires a strong, solid, and enduring regional architecture. An architecture that contributes to building trust among countries in the region. An architecture that provides an outlet for countries to release tension through diplomacy. Our aim is very simple, which is to ensure sustainable peace and security in the region. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Asia-Pacific has enjoyed peace dividend that has allowed it become the engines of global economy. For the case of Indonesia, for example, our economic growth is expected to reach between 4.7 until 5%, less than our expectation before, but still remain higher than the average of the country can reach in this current economic situation in the world. The regional architecture in this region are very much in place. Strong, inclusive, open, and transparent regional institution and mechanism have become the foundation for the architecture in the Asia-Pacific that we enjoy today. In the last 4 decades, Indonesia's diplomatic footprint and ASEAN centrality in the architecture building of Asia-Pacific is undisputable. ASEAN-led processes and mechanisms such as Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, or we call it TEC, ASEAN Plus Dialogue Partners, ASEAN Plus 3, the ASEAN Regional Forum, the ASEAN Summit, and ASEAN Defense Minister Meeting have been important elements in the regional architecture of Asia-Pacific. Indonesia has also amplified its commitment to bolster other regional architecture through organizations such as APEC, Melanesian Spearhead Group or MSG, and an array of other regional initiatives and organizations. The presence of a sound regional architecture has contributed once again in the maintaining of peace and stability in Asia Pacific. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, while we have a working existing regional architecture in Asia Pacific, I would like to point out, however, that regional architecture building is not an event. It is an evolving process. It needs to be adapted to the dynamics, changes, and transformation taking place in the region. That is the only way that a regional architecture can maintain its role as an effective tool to address challenges and at the same time to seize the opportunity for countries to prosper and thrive. In this context, Indonesia will continue its leading role and leadership in the building an effective evolving regional architecture in the Asia Pacific. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now turn to my second point, that is the need to develop, to strengthen the architecture in the Indian Ocean. Let us turn from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean. The architecture in the Indian Ocean remains very silent. For decades, Indonesia has put so much focus in building a regional architecture in the Asia Pacific. However, as recognized by President Joko Widodo, that our maritime strategy must be larger than the Pacific Ocean. Let us look at the map. Where is Indonesia? If we look at Indonesia, we are really bridging the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. So we have a very strategic position, geographically speaking, to bridge between the Pacific Ocean and Indian Ocean. We have a lot regional architecture in the Pacific, and we have almost none here in the Indian Ocean. So Indonesia plans to do something here to fill the gap in the absence of any regional architecture in the Indian Ocean. Let me continue. Indonesia as a nation, as I mentioned to you, that is a nation between two oceans, the Pacific and Indian Ocean. Indonesia must be able to navigate, to be at the epicenter of these two maritime waters. From the strategic point of view, the 19th century was defined by the Atlantic Ocean. The 20th century was characterized by the Pacific Ocean. And the 21st century will be determined by Indian Ocean. So why does the Indian Ocean matter? Ladies and gentlemen, the Indian Ocean has its challenges and opportunity. On challenges, we are aware that challenges in the Indian Ocean are not too different to that of the Pacific Ocean. Latent maritime disputes are waiting to surface. Distrust and unstable relations between countries linger. Non-traditional security threats are undeniable, and the persistent problem of piracy are some obvious examples. However, abundant opportunities also lies in the Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean serves as a maritime highway connecting Africa, Europe, Asia, and Australia. That is one of the main crossroads of global trade and economic growth. Today, half of world container ship, 1/3 of the world bulk cargo traffic, and 2/3 of the world's oil shipment pass through the Indian Ocean. Rich mineral resources are waiting to be discovered offshore and in the seabed. The Indian Ocean Rim is home more than 2.6 billion people, 2/5 of humankind living in the Indian Ocean Rim countries. After understanding the challenges and opportunities, Indian Ocean needs a regional mechanism that can effectively seize the potential and address the multifaceted challenges of the region. Indonesia is keen to use its considerable experience in building institutions and developing rules and norms in the Asia-Pacific and appropriately apply this in the Indian Ocean region. We recognize that an all-inclusive, meaningful regional architecture will enable us to address challenges in the Indian Ocean. Our awareness on the region need for a functioning architecture was prompted when we had to deal with a large-scale natural disaster like tsunami in 2004. We realized that the region needs an effective regional forum to deal with piracy when this crime became rampant and complex, threatening the flow of energy and trade. Moreover, we realized that the existing regional architecture in the Indian Ocean lacks the tool to anticipate possible new strategic contests and rivalries. Indeed, peace and stability in this part of the world at this moment of time cannot and should not be taken for granted. In this regard, Nation of IORA, or Indian Ocean Rim Association, must invest time, resources, and engagement in IORA to work together to strengthen their institution and building an effective regional architecture to respond to these challenges. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, strengthening and developing a positive and constructive regional architecture is not only pertinent, but also crucial to the future of the Indian Ocean. As chairman of IORA in 2015-2017, Indonesia will use every avenue to raise the IORA stature as the main vehicle to strengthen regional architecture in the Indian Ocean. The future architecture in the Indian Ocean should be capable of reducing the potential rivalry and competition in the region by promoting habit of cooperation and dialogue. It should build trust between countries. It should also nurture the seed of long-term collaboration among countries in the region. It must reflect the dynamism and the vitality of the countries in the region to enable them to build partnership through a win-win paradigm and mindset where no one is left behind. The ASEAN mechanism, such as the ASEAN Regional Forum, East Asia Summit, Treaty Amity and Cooperation in the Southeast Asia are models of best practices that this region can observe to build confidence in the region. The architecture in the Indian Ocean should create a condition conducive for all countries to grow. The architecture should be all-inclusive and capable of addressing the development gaps in the region. The architecture should open new opportunities to all nations to achieve economic growth and become a new center and engine for the global economy. Hence, we need to encourage more centers of growth in the Indian Ocean. The architecture at the same time must provide an avenue for countries in Indian Ocean to cooperate and promote rule of law, democracy, human rights, and good governance. It must uphold respect of uniqueness, sovereignty, and integrity, as well as political independence of each nation. Concrete contribution and engagement from all countries will allow the achievement of peace, stability, and prosperity, not just in the Indian Ocean, but also the world at large. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the commitment of Indonesia to maximize its role as chair of IORA 2015-2017 in strengthening the Indian Ocean regional architecture. We want to ensure that IORA will fulfill its role as the apex pan-Indian Ocean multilateral forum, as called for by IORA foreign minister. We believe that IORA should begin working on mechanism and forum similar to those that exist in Asia-Pacific. IORA needs to strengthen its role in addressing political and security challenges. In this context, Indonesia will be working toward a framework that will allow countries in the region to address such challenges. This will include reviving and reframing the Indian Ocean dialogue within IORA. This will provide an avenue for countries in the region to discuss regional security challenges and how countries in the region could cooperate. In this context, an Indian Ocean Concord deserves our serious consideration. I would like to repeat it once again, that an Indian Ocean Concord deserves our serious consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, Indonesia might not be a military superpower. Indonesia might not become a giant economic power, but for sure, Indonesia will grow to be a country that can contribute. The majority of our population is Muslim. We are the biggest Muslim population country. At the same time, we are a democratic country. Our economy will continue to grow. The rise of Indonesia will never threaten others. The rise of Indonesia is for peace and stability of the world. So I thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Master.
Foreign Minister, you have laid out a very far-sighted vision of somehow strengthening the bridges between the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. We have tended in the United States to look at the Indian Ocean region more in terms of the land wars that we've been fighting there. But I think you've opened up the prospect of new architecture and other types of strengthened links. As you were making your remarks, what went through my mind is that China has also come up with this new Silk Road initiatives, which includes a maritime component that will be extending into the Indian Ocean, and a land component, which will strengthen the rail and road connections to the land portions. How do you see Indonesia and China working together in this new interest in looking westward as opposed to eastward? Is this an area where you see Indonesia able to cooperate with China, or do you see, and there's also the question of whether the relations between China and India with China showing more interest in this region, are going to be competitive or cooperative? I'd be interested if you've have some thoughts on that question.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Roy. First of all, is the relation between Indonesia and China is very good. Yeah. I think for every country, China has the potential to be a major partner. Mm-hmm. China can contribute to the development not only in the region, but also to the world. Now it comes to the concept of One Belt, One Road of China. We discussed a lot with China about this concept, because at the same time, President Jokowi also has the vision of making Indonesia as the world maritime fulcrum. So we will look at where those concepts with our concept can merge together. The issue is, of course, that is very, very crucial issue for Indonesia as an archipelagic state is the connectivity. So that's why President Jokowi makes priority, a very clear priorities about the connectivity, including the maritime connectivity. Last night, I mentioned about the intention or the plan of the government to build 24 new ports, etc., etc. So if the concept from China and the One Belt and One Road can support the Indonesia concept of the maritime fulcrum or vice versa, then I think we can cooperate. Now, when you ask about China, of course, people in this room will also question about the situation in the South China Sea.
Right.
The discussion between ASEAN and China is a routine discussion, dialogue between China and ASEAN. For Indonesia, and I think that is also the concern of every country, that is to see that the South China Sea is peaceful. That is the main concern of everybody, including Indonesia. Because there are two issues when we talk about the South China Sea. One is on the claim, the overlapping claims, which is we let the countries to settle it down. But the other issue that is very important also is on the peace and stability in the region. So now we are starting, ASEAN and China are starting discussion about when are we going to start negotiation on the code of conduct. And we agreed already to move on by discussing the possible element and structure of the code of conduct. So again, Indonesia also always believes on dialogue. We will pursue the means of dialogue to settle the potential problem or the problems, that is including the potential instability in South China Sea. So that's the way Indonesia sees the region and the possibility of having the cooperation between the concept of China with One Road, One Belt and the Indonesian vision as a world maritime fulcrum.
I'm glad you brought this issue of the South China Sea into the discussion, because you correctly, I think, put your emphasis on building organizational structures.
Yep.
And certainly one of the extraordinary organizations that has emerged in the last, since 1968, is ASEAN itself. But this is why the South China Sea is important. We have some territorial disputes there, but that involves only 4 of the 10 ASEAN countries. You're talking about a bridging mechanism that brings the Indian Ocean region into play. Well, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, you could say, are both have Indian Ocean aspects. But many of the other members of ASEAN don't have that Indian Ocean perspective. What are the implications of a strengthened move to build new organizational structures in the Indian Ocean for the future of ASEAN?
I think when we discuss about the Indian Ocean, by the way, China has the observer status in the the IORA. So we would like also to encourage China to participate in the cooperation within the IORA. To share, the IORA at this very moment focusing on all the economic cooperation, the maritime economic cooperation. Now, as I mentioned to you before, that what we are lacking is the architecture that can ensure the peace and stability in the Indian Ocean. Your question is how we can connect this architecture with those ASEAN countries which doesn't belong.
Which are Pacific as opposed
to the Pacific. I think that is the crucial role for Indonesia to always bridge the possible new architecture with the ASEAN and with the Pacific Ocean, because that is not impossible that we will have the dialogue, for example, between IORA and ASEAN, as we did ASEAN with other regional architecture. So again, the role of Indonesia in this particular situation is to bridge. The key word is to bridge.
Thank you. I think we have time. Could we take some questions from the audience?
Please.
I would like to ask you to identify yourself and
you can
hopefully
also ask about the Indonesian foreign policy.
Yes. Robert?
Thank you, Stape. Welcome to the Wilson Center, Madam Foreign Minister. I'm Bob Hathaway, a visiting scholar here. We're delighted to
He's
hear
the former director of our Asia program here, so he actually...
I'm waiting for... He actually what? I couldn't wait to... Never mind.
He actually knows something a bit about what you were talking about.
I know all of us are delighted by the news that your president and President Obama are meeting here next month. I wonder if, in light of the forthcoming meeting, you could talk a little bit more about the bilateral relationship. What are your own priorities, your country's priorities out of this meeting next month? What are the principal challenges in the relationship right now? And as part of that answer, if you could also tell us what you would like to see from the United States on the South China Sea controversy beyond what Americans are doing now. Thank you.
Take one by one? Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for the question. When we talk about Indonesia and the US, we are now entering the 5th years of having the comprehensive partnership. 2010, we agreed to have the comprehensive partnership. What does it mean? We have the joint commission meeting at the foreign minister level, and we have also the mechanism for the working group. We have so far more than 6 working groups to work on the issues of priorities between 2 countries. I received questions from the Indonesian journalists as well, why the visit has to happen now. One, because we have been 5 years in the comprehensive partnership. So it's time for Indonesia and the US to look at where we are and to design a stronger future mechanism and relation between the 2 countries. And then the second one is that this is already almost 1 year of the new president, the new administration of Indonesia. And again, this is the right time for the president of Indonesia and the US to sit together. Your question about the priorities. On top of the priorities that we had so far, we see there is another issue that should be injected as priority for the bilateral relation. For example, the issue of maritime cooperation. That is the issue that the US shows interest to have to strengthen the cooperation with Indonesia. And of course, economic and trade and investment remains one of the engine priorities of the bilateral relation. The other issue that we discussed yesterday with Secretary Kerry is issues related to pluralism moderation. I would like to share with you that recently the President of Indonesia visited Gulf countries. We are also very active in the OIC. We are very active in other organizations. And wherever we go, we always try to encourage every country, especially, of course, the Islamic countries, to voice out Islam, rahmatan lil alamin. That is Islam that is blessed on humankind, or Islam that is very peaceful. This voice, this position is very important for this time, because we see intolerance attitude. We are really worried about this situation. So coming from the biggest Muslim population country, and at the same time moderation, pluralism, I think that will contribute to send a very strong message that can contribute, of course, once again, to peace and security. And then the next point is how the US can contribute on the South China Sea. What we can expect from the US is to encourage everybody, every countries in the region, to restrain any activities that create tension in the region. That is, the US can play a role to encourage every country in the region to restrain, as Indonesia also did and will do. Because if countries in the region is competing each other to do activities that might create tension, we are afraid that it will threaten the peace and stability in South China Sea.
I think that's a very important point, because if you have been reading the American press, there's quite a bit of concern about the possibility of militarizing the South China Sea, particularly the Spratly Island area. Is that an area where the United States and Indonesia could work together in some fashion? I mean, through existing organizations, to try to not have the militarization of the South China Sea?
Indonesia is a country who believes very much on dialogue and the political negotiation.
Well, thank you. Yes?
Selamat pagi.
So,
Selamat datang to Washington.
terima kasih.
My name is Gerrit Venderwees. I'm from the Netherlands, and I understand you were ambassador to the Netherlands, so I could continue in Dutch perhaps, but maybe for the rest of the audience, that's not so good. My question is on women in politics. Traditionally in Asia, the women who were in politics in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and even Indonesia itself were from prominent families. But I think right now you are seeing a new generation of women in politics, like yourself, like Dr. Tsai Ing-wen from Taiwan, who is running for presidency there and who is likely to win there. Are we seeing a new trend, or is this still very much of an exception?
I think that will be the permanent trend. So, well,
Jane Harmon would very much agree with you.
dank u wel for your question. Again, I think the woman in politics will be the permanent trend in Indonesia. In the cabinet, we have 32 cabinet members. 8 of them are female ministers. So it means that 25% of Indonesian cabinet members are female. I think for Indonesia, that is the highest percentage so far. I can speak now for the Minister for Foreign Affairs. I think in the last 10 years, is it? I mean, my ambassador was the Secretary General of the ministry, so I have to check with him. I think started from 10 years ago that the new recruited diplomats consist of 50%, more than, at 1 or 2 years, then it reached more than 50% female diplomats coming in to the ministry every year. I could not imagine this percentage will happen in the ministry, because sometimes people said that diplomacy is the man word, doesn't fit with the woman. But in fact, that female young diplomat perform also well in the ministry. If we look at the training center, for example, the Secretary General, the former Secretary General, among the best 10, 7 are female diplomats. So I'm really proud of them, the female diplomats. And again, to answer your question, I think the empowerment of women in Indonesia is the permanent trend. And it shows also that Islam, democracy, women empowerment can hand in hand and can live hand in hand. And you know, Indonesia is one of the laboratory where you can see these 3 elements happens at the same time.
I'm thoroughly intimidated.
Dank u wel.
Is there a woman member of the audience? Here, let's go over here and take a question.
I would like to stand up just to extend my gratitude and happiness to see Her Excellency Marsudi, the first foreign native Indonesian minister, come to the United States and see President Obama. My name is Veronica Cartier. I born in Jakarta, and I grew up in Europe and become American about 30 years ago. I wrote the Spratly Island in 1995 for my master's degree and doctoral research also. And I am very familiar with it. Therefore, I'm based here in Washington, D.C., and I'm researcher for International Conflict Management Initiative. So I'm very familiar with the international conflict, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. We all know the aggression of China toward China Sea, which is then known Spratly Island, and I know is based on separate island for separate countries, but now later is known as South China Sea. However, I'm here with the think tank group in Washington, D.C., and I follow very much what is IORIA, and as you said, it is the connection and strengthened for Indian Ocean. That is matter. It is a significant word that you brought today is bridge. And it's come to my mind, it's true. It's bridging and connection with this country. As Indonesia is, for some who you may not know.
Excuse me, I'm going to interrupt.
I
Do you have a
will.
question for the foreign minister?
I will, sir,
Okay.
because I'm just so exciting. Okay. Indonesia is very much the culture of India. And India is a strategic partnership with the United States in security as well as in economy. Now my question, would you consider partnership, closer bilateral and closer relationship, especially for security in the Pacific region and for Indian Ocean, to connect from Pacific to Indonesian to Indian Ocean? And that's my question. Would you consider to make a closer relationship with India as U.S. strategic security partnership? Thank you. Terima kasih, Bu. Terima
Terima
kasih.
kasih. Terima kasih. It's about India, is it?
It's a closer security partnership with India. On the part of Indonesia. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, it is.
I think terima kasih Ibu. Terima kasih for the question. I think India has a significant role in Asia, and our relation with India is also very, very good. And if I'm not mistaken, we already have comprehensive or strategic partnership with India already. So with the key players, we already have either comprehensive or strategic partnership in this particular, especially with India. So we did, Ibu, we did have the strategic partnership with India already.
I'm afraid that has to be our last question because Jane Harman has just returned from a meeting with the Secretary of Defense, and she wants to have a few minutes to talk to the Foreign Minister. Could I ask you to keep your seats, please, while I walk the Foreign Minister out, and then you're free to leave. Thank you very much.
Once again, thank you very much for having me.